الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on His last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. As was introduced to you, the topic is that of worshipping Allah in His oneness. And this, of course, is a translation of the Arabic phrase Tawheed al-Ibadah, which can also be expressed as maintaining the unity of Allah in worship. To understand this topic and what it is trying to get across to you, it's necessary first to understand what is meant by Tawheed. Of course, that would be a lecture in itself, and I'm not going to try to cover every aspect of Tawheed, but I will only try to get across to you something of the essence. The essence being the uniqueness of Allah. Though it is commonly translated as the oneness of Allah, I prefer in English to use the uniqueness of Allah. Because when we use the term uniqueness in English, we're talking about a oneness, but a special oneness. Whereas when we talk about merely oneness, for example, there's one red house on my street. This is one, but there could be other red houses on other streets. You see, there's a oneness here, but it's not talking about uniqueness. Whereas when we speak of the oneness of Allah, what we really mean is a oneness in the purest sense, in the sense of being unique. The oneness of Allah is different from the oneness of anything else, anything in creation. So what we're talking about is that the divine attributes, how we understand Allah, is in such a way that He does not share His attributes with His creation, nor does the creation share any of His attributes. Neither does Allah have human characteristics or characteristics of His creation, nor does the creation have characteristics of Allah. This is what we are really talking about when we speak of Tawheed. And this is clearly illustrated in the verse in Surah Ash-Shura, verse 11, wherein Allah says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. And we also know it in Surah Al-Ikhlas, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. That there is nothing like Allah. And it is on the basis of that Islam stands alone amongst all of the religions around the world. When people start to search to find out what is the correct religion, because every religion says they are the correct religion, and Islam is no different. Islam says we are the correct religion. Our way is the only way. And everyone says the same thing. How does a person distinguish? How does he know? A person who may be born in a Muslim family, but his Islam or the Islam of his family is cultural Islam. You know, they gather for the cultural gatherings, they have Islamic names on it, but he doesn't know anything about Islam really. Or the person may be a Christian or a Buddhist or whatever. How does he know that Islam is the right way? It's from this point. This is the starting point, which clearly illustrates that Islam is the true religion of God. Because it is only in Islam that Allah is given His correct status. It is only in Islam that all of the attributes of Allah are given to Allah without any compromise. All of the other systems, all of the other religions, all of them share some of Allah's attributes with the creation, or they give Allah the attributes of His creation. It's either one or the other. If they deny Allah, then they take the attributes of Allah and they give it to the creation. Atheists who hold that matter, for example, always existed, is eternal. Matter is eternal. They say there's no God. It's just matter. Matter was always there. And they have to add matter in motion. Because otherwise, then they run into the problem of how did things start to change. You know, well, they say matter in motion. And as it is in motion, accidentally hitting each other, they starts to form molecules, and etc., etc. Matter in motion is eternal. So what have they done? They have taken the eternal attribute of Allah. Allah is the only eternal. And they have given it to matter. So they don't have to deal with responsibility. They have deified matter. They have made matter their God. Because everything, according to them, is a product of matter. Matter in motion. Their lives, everything about them. What controls their lives? They're made up of matter, everything. So matter becomes their God. Of course, Christians we know, who say that God became a man in the form of Jesus because mankind had committed sin from the time of Adam, and this sin was inherited generation after generation. And it had reached a stage where the only sacrifice that could be made to atone for that sin was a divine sacrifice. So God had to become a man, kill himself to please himself. This is Christian theology. So much of the world follows it. But when you look at it, what is it saying? It's actually nonsensical. Because what it has done is it has played with people's minds. It has taken away reason from people. Because to accept this premise or this statement, one has to turn off one's mind. To accept that the ever-living God died, this is nonsense. To accept that the Creator became His creation is nonsense. Though the Christian will, in a minute, grab you and say, well, can't Allah do anything? And of course we have, Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. Yes, Allah says He is able to do all things. So you have to say yes. So he says, well, okay, why couldn't He become a man? Why couldn't He have a son? But the point is, when we say Allah can do anything, we're talking about anything which is consistent with Him being Allah. Not anything which will make Him less than Allah. No, we don't include those in the realm of possibilities. So it becomes a nonsensical question to ask, can the ever-living die? No. Once you said ever-living, it means cannot die, never dies. So to ask, can the ever-living die, is a nonsensical question. Similarly, can the Creator become His creation, is nonsensical. Because if the Creator became the creation, then He is in need of a Creator. He's no longer Creator. So it's nonsensical. But for Christians, this idea of God being able to do anything, what it led them to is this concept of God becoming man. God taking on the attributes of men. And whether you go to Buddhism or you go to Hinduism or all the other isms, this is what we find in there. You have either people who are half God, half men, or God-men, they call them avatars, amongst the Hindus. You have gods that have relations with men and have children, half gods, half men, like the Greeks and the Romans, they have these. And in all of these cases, what we find here is a confusion in the minds of people as to who God is. It is only in Islam that the knowledge of who God is clear. It's reasonable, it makes sense. It's not something which requires, mental gymnastics. Like when the Christian says, God is one, but he's three. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1. This is mental gymnastics. In Islam, we don't have anything like that. It's clear-cut. And it is from this point, the starting point of Tawheed. The uniqueness, the oneness of Allah. And what this does for us also is, for those of us that are involved in any way in the sciences or in any of the philosophies, etc., that are out there as we study in the universities, etc., we have to always keep this concept of the uniqueness of Allah in mind, because so much of philosophy and science today seeks to give the attributes of Allah to His creation. Much of it seeks to do so. So it's very important for those of us that are involved in the educational systems here that we are wary, we are looking out for the various points at which Allah's attributes are being given to the creation. A classical example is that of Einstein's theory of relativity. This is something anybody who does his O-levels, he has to go through this. He has to learn, in physics, he has to learn E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, which translates into English as energy or matter can neither be created nor destroyed. That's how it's written out. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy evolves into mass or matter, and matter changes back into energy. It's a continuum. They split the atom with the same theory. The atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, atomic energy is all based on this theory of Einstein's. However, as the theory stands, it is for us a statement of kufr, a statement of disbelief, a statement in which one gives the attributes of Allah to His creation. Because when you say that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, you're saying energy is uncreated. It does not have a beginning. That is Allah. Allah is uncreated. He alone has no beginning. When you say it can neither be created nor destroyed, means it has no end. Allah is the one who has no end. All else is destroyed by Allah. It's created by Him, be destroyed by Him. So for a Muslim who is studying in such systems, though he is required to produce this on his examination, because if he says, no, this is a statement of kufr, he's going to fail his O-levels, and what is he going to do after that? Well, he has to put, in brackets after it, for example, by man. That's all right. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed by man. We're safe now. When we look at worship, because we're talking about the unity or maintaining the unity of Allah in our worship, we also need to understand what is worship in Islam. The term used is ibadah. And ibadah comes from the Arabic word abd. I'm sure most of you have heard this before. Abd meaning a servant or a slave, one who has submitted his will to his master. So what we're talking about here in ibadah is the submission of the human will to the divine will. And when we speak of the divine will to the will of God, we're talking about the legal will. Legal will, in Arabic they call it al-irada al-shar'iyya, as opposed to the creational will, al-irada al-kawniyya or al-mashi'a al-kawniyya. This is distinction made because there are some things in this life which we have no control over. It's the will of Allah, and man's will cannot interfere.